A great deal of attention from the British and the world in recent weeks has been that of fan violence. Last month, people around the world watched a soccer championship in Brussels turn violent. When it was over 38 people had died, mostly Italian soccer fans, 437 were injured. Could it happen in the U.S.? Today's Sports Journal looks at that issue.
It's Sunday, June 16th, and today's edition of Sports Journal is brought to you by L.A. from Anheuser-Busch. With half the alcohol of our regular beer, sometimes it's the perfect thing to say.
The fans had come to celebrate a soccer game, the European Cup of Champions in Brussels. The Italian team Juventus versus England's Liverpool. The British hooligans had come for something else. A brawl, a violent confrontation fueled by drink and rage and national hatred. Before the game even began, taunting ignited skirmishes that erupted into a riot. 437 were injured, 38 died when a fleeing tide of panicked spectators collapsed a wall. The world of sport still wears a black armband of shame.
Sadly, headlines about soccer death and violence are all too familiar. It happens in China, in South America, even in the Soviet Union. But because those places are far away and the victims nameless, even graphic pictures of the mayhem soon fade from our concern. We say it can't happen here. But the truth is, everywhere, the flags of hope, of a fan's allegiance, can become the weapons of violence.
The soccer authorities have tended to, I think, sit back in their private boxes and have their glass of scotch or sherry at halftime and not look upon the vast majority of the fans in those more primitive conditions as being worthy of more than sell them a ticket and let them in. And I think it's taken this incredible horror of Brussels to make them have meetings and sit back and say, well, you know, we can't just say we're not at fault. We can't just say these aren't soccer fans. The fact is, soccer fans or not, they have come to soccer games and they have created death.
There's a small percentage of British soccer fans who are known as rowdies or hooligans, and these people attend soccer events with an intent to commit violence. Many of these people who are involved in hooliganism are lower class working people. They're bored. They do not gain any self-respect or any identity from their own day-to-day activities. So they gain their identity and their self-worth from the behavior that they are involved in at the soccer matches.
They have no comfort, no security. Once they're in, they're herded in. I mean, it's like a herd of animals rather than fans who are led to their seats.
A major problem in Europe is the stadiums themselves. Thousands of fans must stand for hours. Milling behavior stirs emotions into anger. Facilities are old, not only tinderboxes for human violence, but structural conflagration. In Bradford, England, a fire consumed a stadium in minutes. More than 50 spectators perished. That and the crimes of Brussels have forced leaders of American sport to take a closer look.
What happened in Belgium is a case where they really had no security. They made 4 or 5 major mistakes going into the incident, and they didn't react. Then when they did react, they reacted badly. Now, we have examples in sports in this country where we've reacted poorly or not at all. I think sports has a responsibility to see that that doesn't happen.
Because sports knows it can. A stampeding crowd killed 11 fans at a Who concert in Cincinnati in 1979. Less than a year ago, Detroit's World Series victory began with rejoicing that ignited violence outside.
The battles that consumed the city outside of the stadium were not on the part of the sports fans on the inside, but rather on a lot of the suburban white youths who had come in from surrounding Detroit, were partying outside. This was not inner-city youths in sneakers. These were the kids who normally wear alligators and pullover sweaters and attend some of the finer prep schools throughout Michigan.
There's an acceptance in society now that says when you win a big thing, you can go out and destroy the town. I think law enforcement has to realize that that's the possibility, and they've got to take steps.
Baseball has already taken steps, limiting drinking at several stadiums and restricting sales. Even bleachers have been closed as a warning to rowdy fans. But for some authorities on sports and violence, that's not enough.
I think that there should be an outright ban on alcohol sales in every single stadium in the United States. Secondly, I believe that there should be stricter laws to provide criminal punishment to fans who engage in violent conduct in the stands.
No, I disagree. You can't legislate behavior. You have to organize behavior. You don't legislate it, you know. So then what would they do? Everyone would pass a bunch of laws, and then who would arrest a whole group of fans? I mean, this doesn't make any sense.
There are fundamental laws which govern the conduct of society, and those should not stop at the ticket gate of any sporting event.
Tickets themselves, often expensive, and the great distance between most rival cities help discourage fan violence in the U.S. But
we all have to recognize that violence is a sign of the times.
Given the right conditions, any individual can be caught up in a crowd incident.
Society's not perfect. The great majority of sports fans are really terrific people. But there's going to be always an element. So if you understand that up front and take preventative actions, you're not going to have a major problem.
violence. It's a cancer that has attacked sport with death, suffering, and shame. We, ourselves, are the victim, the problem, and the answer. This is Greg Lewis for NBC Sports Journal.
When do you say L.A.?
When I've got an afternoon of painting ahead of me, I say L.A.
Think it needs 2 coats?
Nah.
When do you say L.A.?
When it's open house and I'm the host, I say L.A.
Stu?
Bob.
Sorry.
But I'll change it.
From Anheuser-Busch, L.A. beer. Great taste with half the alcohol. Sometimes it's the perfect thing to say.
You can say that again.
Stu?
No, clam dip.
L.A. Sometimes it's the perfect thing to say.
Look at my watch, it was 9:31, so I called my baby, said let's have some fun, and we rode. Riding on the rebel. We were riding on the rebel, rolling from the break of dawn.
The new Honda Rebel. Everything you ever wanted in your first motorcycle, only $12.98.
And we rode, riding on the rebel. We were riding on a rebel, rolling from the break of dawn.
We Americans love our cars. The way they look, the way they run, the way they make us feel free. At Valvoline, we know how special any car can be. That's why we make specialized motor oils to keep your car from breaking down. Like Valvoline Turbo 5 to beat the intense heat in turbocharged cars. And Valvoline All Climate to combat the stress of stop-and-go driving.